to another edition of The Right Has Left, as we are now over 50 podcasts, and since we started this show late last year, and I want to thank all of our subscribers that have joined our podcast here on The Right Has Left. And again, as we do each and every week, we talk about all things Trumpism, as far as things that are going on with this current administration that, you know, kind of like gives us great stuff to talk about. For those of you who are brand new to the channel and to this podcast, a little bit of my history. I was a Republican for some, 50 years. And I even voted for Donald Trump on his first term. And about 6 to 7 months into his administration, I just started saying, like, there is something really weird about this guy. And I just no longer could accept the current pathway that the Republican Party was going. So I left the Republican Party. And will I ever return? It depends if they get back on what the Republican platform actually is supposed to stand for. They have drifted so far from their platform. That's why I call my podcast The Right Has Left, because by golly, they have left. So let's get into the news from this past week that I like to talk about. And I always do a deep dive into certain things that are going on to kind of give you, my viewing audience, a little bit more clarity. What is important about this podcast is that we use critical thinking skills and not just stupid, ridiculous comments that we kind of seem to find from this current administration. So, what is going on? Let's start first and foremost with what is going on in Iran. As we all know, that Project Freedom, as Donald Trump likes to call it, as well as Pete Hegseth, they have paused that. And supposedly the United States and Iran are supposed to be talking again about a resolution to bring this conflict to an end. And whether they will do that or not, of course, is to be forthcoming. The reason I say that, as you know, we are currently seeing a lot of action. In fact, basically military buildup starting all over again as Iran takes pot shots at our U.S. fleet that is in the Strait of Hormuz. And we fire back, right back at them. And the Strait of Hormuz, of course, is what is in the middle of all this, is we're trying to keep the oil pathway in the strait open, and it's being kind of difficult as they run into mines, as Iran used their fast speedboats with missile launchers on it, and they're taking pot shots at our ships, and then we start taking shots at the Iranian shorelines, and of course the U.S. fleet has to defend itself, and that all makes perfect sense, right? Right, of course. And even though he calls the war terminated, and as you know, we've been getting into these hearings, and Pete Hegseth, since there was a pause on the peace accords and that there was supposed to be a ceasefire, they called that was the end of the 60 days. Therefore, Congress does not have any authority to declare a war or even say halt the hostilities, because they started all over. They're back to square one. And there's been a lot of talk of whether, even though the Wars Power Act is even constitutional. Well, we don't know if it is or not, do we? Because the fact of the matter is all the presidents call that it is not constitutional. And so where do we go from there? And each president, not just Donald Trump, but going clear back to the Nixon era, they've said that the Wars Power Act was unconstitutional. So each sitting president, this is not Donald Trump, they say that Congress, that whole thing is unconstitutional. It's yet to been taken to the Supreme Court to see if in fact it is or isn't. So we'll have to see where we go from there. But anyway, Donald Trump is still rejecting Iran's peace proposals. They send some new demands to Iran, and they're supposed to be looking that over. And, of course, as Trump does each and every week, he says the conflict's coming to an end and that Iran will probably be accepting the new peace proposals, and therefore we can be bringing this whole conflict to an end, and we'll be moving on. As oil continues to go over $4.50 a gallon at the pump, and the American people are kind of getting really fed up with all of this, and, of course, they go back to Congress, and they want billions and billions of more to fight the war in Iran and to restock our defense stockpiles that it has been draining at a point of about 20%, and so on it goes. Now, in a recent interview, Trump declared that he would never have approved an offer that was made to Iran by his negotiator, Steve Witkoff. So now there's a little bit of conflict with his own people that are working over there. This is a damning admission. He seemed to blurt out that he has no idea what his own representatives are offering, showing deep disengagement from the details of the talks while demonstrating that anything his negotiators do offer should not be believed. Meanwhile, Republicans are beginning to break with Trump. Political reported that he could soon face a far more resistance, and the Times has reported that the GOP is feeling increasing nervousness. And so it just goes on and on. Trump's admission was so self-incriminating that why it reveals something much bigger about our crisis, why the GOP is showing fresh signs of panic, and what to look for next. Meanwhile, U.S. naval ships in Iran are exchanging missile fires, as I just mentioned, and U.S. warships are firing at the shorelines of Iran in retaliation of Iranian speedboats launching missiles at U.S. destroyers. All of this, as Trump says, the ceasefire is still in place and a peace deal is being reviewed by Iranian officials. Yeah, so here we go. I actually don't foresee anything coming close to an end on this conflict, and here's why. Iran, and there's even resistance within the Iranian regime, because you've got different facets of the Iranian government that are basically pray to all out, let's just blow the hell out of everything and everybody. And then you've got a few there that are trying to kind of say, well, let's at least look at it. Okay, all along, as you've been trying, as you're well aware of, Pakistan's trying to act as the midline mediator between the United States and Iran. And so the Iranians will talk to Pakistan, but they really don't want to talk directly to the United States. So, and all these different offers. The whole thing, of course, is over Iran getting rid of their nuclear pile. Get it completely out of the country, give the United States, do something with it, but get it out of Iran. You guys cannot have any nuclear weapons or even the potential to make it. And, of course, the current offer on the table is the next 20 years. And whether that's going to hold up or not, I don't know. But the bottom line is we, the United States, started this whole thing, and our European allies and everybody else is starting to say enough is enough. And meanwhile, we, the American people, continue to see our gas prices go up because they can't keep the strait open. And, fertilizers are not getting through. The whole mess is affecting each and every one of us, not only here, but also in Europe. Jet fuel prices are going up. People are now getting to the point they can't afford to fly. Credit card usage is going up, even though, I try to be transparent here. We've had some pretty good job numbers reported. It was up above 20% of what they thought it was going to be. So jobs are still being created. And the economy on that aspect, on that facet, is unless the numbers are weirded out, and I don't think they are, we're getting jobs, so. But the bottom line is, people, this war is not very popular, and President Trump's numbers are going down the sewer rapidly. So we have to keep that all in mind. Now, speaking of our president, Donald Trump, the Senate and House Democrats have launched an investigation into whether pardons and communications issued by President Trump were driven by pay-to-play dynamics. Now, according to letters obtained by CBS News, Among the pardons being probed by lawmakers are those granted to cryptocurrency billionaire Changpeng Zhou, and who pleaded guilty to money laundering, and nursing home operator Joseph Schwartz, who was convicted of tax crimes, and entrepreneur Trevor Milton, sentenced to 4 years in prison in 2023. After being convicted of lying to investors. Now, on this past Thursday, California Congressman Dave Min and Raul Ruiz, as well as Vermont Senator Peter Welch, sent letters to more than a dozen recipients of executive clemency, seeking to unearth how they may have received favorable treatment from Mr. Trump or his advisors through intermediaries of financial contributions or other forms of influence. Now, the Democrats are also examining the impact of pardons and communications on thousands of financial victims. These letters note that Mr. Trump's acts of clemency are depriving victims of compensation and justice, citing the president's elimination of hundreds of millions of dollars in restitution, money owed to crime victims, and fines. Now, clemency has come under scrutiny during Mr. Trump's second term with his pardons or communications of the sentences of a number of allies who have faced prosecution, as well as those who have hired people close to him. In the letters, the Democrats argued the president has appeared to reward his allies in a manner that departs from the Supreme Court's description of executive clemency as an act of grace exercised for the public welfare. So let's talk a little bit about that. This president has he's actually executed more pardons than any previous president. And these people that he is giving pardons to, clear back to the folks who did the insurrection, back in 2020, to major people who have been convicted of major crimes, he's given them pardons. And these pardons all seem to happen after there is a lot of behind-the-scenes dealings that these people who are getting these pardons, they're either their attorneys or their representatives, somehow come up with a lot of money to give to Trump's various organizations, campaign fundraisers, whatever the case may be. I'm not talking just a little change here, folks. I'm talking thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And all of a sudden, by the stroke of the pen, they get out of prison. And their crimes are wiped away. This is from a guy who is a 34-count convicted felon himself. And that's why they're looking into it. Now, certain pardons, I get it. Every president has pardoned somebody or somebody. And yes, I know Joe Biden has done it, and every president before that. I get that. But this particular president is receiving financial compensation, a lot of it, for doing it. So is it a play for pay? And that's what they're looking into. And you've got to understand that is a little bit on what we call illegal side. Now, wouldn't you agree? I sure would. So, another thing that's going on with this president, and I've got a couple of things that are just like way out in left field. And if you haven't heard about this, so Donald Trump is having a UFC fight on the South Lawn in June. Yes, you heard that right. He's going to have a major entertainment venue on the lawn of the White House, a UFC fight. And if you don't believe me, watch this.
There are no people tougher in sports than the people behind me. These are the toughest people. I know them all. I know the football players. I know just about everybody you can know. When they come to the Oval Office, we give out all championships, or baseball, football, basketball, everything. They're always up here. We take the champions, and these are the great champions. And as you know, on June 14th, we're having a big fight. It's never going to happen again. Never happened before. And it's all of the best fighters, the best 4 fighters standing right behind me, and all champions. And it's going to happen right in front of the White House. Here's a picture. I think a lot of people haven't seen this yet. I'll give you that. I think you'll probably be able to do okay with it.
Wow. The media's going to go crazy.
Not bad, right? Championship belt. Dana White was here last night. Did you know that? He was here last night.
No.
He loves this guy. He loves all of them. Here's another one. This is another. They're going all the way out, all online. It's all people invited. Our country is invited to this. It's free. And in the park right across the street, they're going to have, I guess, anywhere from 75 to 100,000 people. Free. They're going to set up 8 big screens, and they're going to have the fight. And then out here, we're going to have 4,000 seats right in front of the front door of the White House. The hardest ticket I've ever had to.
The best live show on earth, June 14th.
This will be the greatest show on earth. Is at night. That's all lighting and cover. And I think you get the idea. So it's going to be June 14th, and it's going to be great. And this is a little different for these political people. And but these are real warriors. When we talk about warriors, these are warriors.
Yeah, isn't that just absolutely bizarre? I mean, they're setting up this huge stage and bringing in VIP guests, and, of course, they're going to be paying for that. I'm sure Donald Trump, Donald Trump, he's a businessman. These people are not getting in there for free. But for God's sakes, of all things, entertainment wrestling venue, and he's calling these people patriots and great Americans, and for God's sakes, we all know that the UFC fights are rigged. It's entertainment, they're staged, and yet he's bringing these people in and to put on this event, and it is just the most bizarre thing that I think we've ever seen. All right, and other news, Marco Rubio, he's back in the news. And why is he back in the news? Is because after all the rift between Pope Leo and Donald Trump, Marco Rubio has been sent to try to calm the waters and see if he can get the Pope to, be a little bit more receptive to Donald Trump and what's going on in Iran. And it's not going to happen. But still, of all the people that is in the current cabinet of this administration, Marco Rubio is probably the only one that seems to show any kind of common sense, if that's a term we want to use, of everybody he has put in there. And he has a little bit better rapport with not only the media, but with other political figures across this world. And so he sends them over there to try to bring some calm and peace and understanding to the Pope. And, of course, Marco Rubio himself is a very, very devout Catholic. And so that's why I think the president sent him. But even as Marco Rubio was over there, Trump is still throwing names at the Pope and calling him weak and everything else, and he doesn't understand, and oh my God. And so, and how's that supposed to help Marco Rubio, who's there physically in person trying to talk to the Pope? I don't get it. Do you? So, it's just freaking unbelievable. It really is. So anyway, after last week's bipartisan vote in Congress to end the longest shutdown in U.S. history and fund the Department of Homeland Security, now the Republicans are moving ahead with an approximately $70 billion party line plan to fund Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and Customs and Border Protection, CBP, for the rest of the President Trump's time in the White House. Now, the agencies were largely omitted from this last week's funding legislation because Democrats refused to back immigration enforcement funding without reforms after federal agents killed 2 American citizens earlier this year. Nearly all the money, more than $60 billion with a B, is devoted to immigration enforcement and their efforts, further insulating the CBP and ICE from political pressure and congressional oversight after last year's influx of $75 billion, again with a B, dollars from President Trump's signature domestic policy agenda, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, as he likes to call it. So, this goes along with the ballroom, which is very controversial. As you're well aware of now, voting on party lines, the Senate and Congress wants to have you, the American taxpayers, now fund the rest of the ballroom, and this is all because of the event that's happened this past week, past 2 weeks with the White House press corps event that was held outside of the White House and at the Hilton, and which has been traditionally there all this time. And so now they want to put a huge Secret Service bunker below the ballroom, and of course it's not so secret since President Trump himself announced that he wants to do that among everything else that's going there, and that they would hold all future events at the White House to protect the president. I get that. That, in fact, itself makes some common sense. But here's the problem. Trump went ahead and put this ballroom up without any approval of Congress or anybody else. He just went ahead and did it, knocked down the East Wing, and let's just put this baby in there. And then you got all these new dishes and stuff. And, of course, he said that's being contributed by, fundraising. The American people are not paying for this ballroom. Well, now they are. So they've tried to stop it. It's not going to happen. The ballroom is going to go up, and it's going to get built, and the Secret Service bunker is going to be put in down below, and there's nothing nobody can stop this shit. All right, it's going to happen. So, and now we are going to be stuck in paying for it, just like we are stuck paying billions of dollars more for the Iranian conflict, and on it goes. And this administration has created such debt. I mean, we're talking no longer billions. We're talking trillions and trillions of dollars of cost overruns. And of course, he wants to build the arch, and he's now got the golden statue of himself in the same type of pose that the North Korean little guy has in Mar-a-Lago, and now he's got the West Palm Beach Airport named after him. And that, I got to tell you a little bit about that too. That whole thing too, it stinks to heaven high hell. And our governor Ron DeSantis ran that through, and the West Palm Beach board for the West Palm Beach Airport ran it through. But here's what happened: just to get Trump's name, he's licensed it. They just didn't do it in his honor. He frickin' licensed it to the airport into West Palm Beach, and they got to sell only Trump merchandise inside the airport. They got to put his likeness all over at that airport. I'm not going to fly into that frickin' place. I've used to, and going to New York and stuff, no more. But it's turning into a merchandising circus, and they've got to pay this guy for his name. He's licensed his name to that airport. When you see things like Ronald Reagan Airport in Washington, D.C., or, the Bush Airport in Texas, that was done for legacy purposes to honor those particular president. The one in West Palm Beach is not to honor him. That was a business arrangement. He's making money off of it. I mean, you got to give the guys kudos, I guess. It's a business arrangement, but this whole thing started out as they wanted to honor the guy, because he lives there in Mar-a-Lago and West Palm Beach, but it's turned out to a merchandising circus. So, yeah. And the beat goes on, and the beat goes on. All right, moving on in other news. We've got to talk about this too. Yeah. The Trump administration on Friday released a batch of never-before-seen files and videos of unidentified anomalies, or UAPs. It used to be called UFOs. Now, I think the technical term is UAP. As part of an effort to increase transparency and government knowledge of extraterrestrial phenomena, the latest UAP videos, photos, and original source, now shows some very strange anomalies. And are they flying saucers? We don't know. And the original source of these documents from across the entire United States government are all in one place with no clearance required. You can now, ladies and gentlemen, all look at this stuff. Now, while past administrations sought to discredit or dissuade the American people, President Trump is focused on providing maximum transparency to the public, who can now ultimately make up their own minds about the information contained in these files. Why don't he do the same with the Epstein files, huh? How about we do that as well? Now, the White House said in a statement, the release is a function of President Donald Trump's presidential unsealing and reporting system for UAP encounters. Pursue. Isn't it neat how they got all these cool acronyms for this stuff? And photos from the initial disclosure, which is a White House official has stated, is the first of a series of releases, show strangely shaped objects captured on film during the Apollo 12 and Apollo 17 space missions, as you see here. Now, one photo taken from the surface of the moon appears to show a cluster of 3 tiny dots in the sky. He says, Donald Trump has said that there'll be more to come out very, very soon. Now, those 3 dots as seen from the surface of the moon, nobody's been able to confirm exactly what those are. There's been a lot of discussion on that. Now, a transcript of communications between Apollo 17 operators released in the Disclosure Friday details those little dots. And they said, hey, we got a few bright dots or fragments drifting by as we maneuver. We don't know what those are. And neither did NASA at those time. Now, these files have been behind classifications, have long fueled justified speculation and conspiracy theories. And then, of course, the president says it's now time that people see these. Of course, a director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, she also added the same thing. We now need to start seeing what all of these particular things are. Now, on some of these other released files, there are photographs of fighter jets seeing weird things in the sky. There are pictures of what appears to be saucers or some other type of UFOs and people's in the sky over people's backyards. So, for some of you who are close to my age, you may all remember Project Blue Book that the Air Force started. There actually wasn't even a brief television series done by the guy who produced Dragnet and all of those shows. He did the Project Blue Book TV series, and where they were supposed to be investigating UFOs. And of course, every one of those investigations was either listed as unknown, or they tried to figure out what else it was. It was blamed on cloud phenomena and everything else. So, Area 51, a lot of conspiracy theories. So it's kind of funny that Trump now wants to release all this, but when you get into the Epstein files, we can't talk about that. So it goes on and on and on as far as what we're going to be doing with flying saucers and things. I mean, some people have said that, yeah, actually there are some things out there, and they are unexplained, and there may be some type of things going on there that we just can't explain, and so what are we going to do? You basically try to come up with some of this stuff and see where we're going to go with it. Now, let's go ahead and get to our top story. And I always have my top story. You would think it would be about Iran, but it's not going to be about Iran on this particular one. And I'm going to tell you why. What I want to talk about is this, because it is getting stinkier and stinkier and stinkier. Gerrymandering. And we have to have a conversation about gerrymandering. All right? Now, it's perfectly legal. For those of you who do not know what gerrymandering is, it is the redrawing of districts to favor one particular party. Now, both parties, Democrats and Republicans, have been guilty of this. But lately, the Republican Party has been taking this to a new level. And I mean, for all the southeastern states, this is where it's been becoming a, really, really big news. And as you're well aware of, just recently, the Virginia Supreme Court shot down what the Democrats tried to do in gerrymandering in that state to give them more opportunity for seats. In fact, it has basically killed the Democratic Party attempt to try to stay in line with keeping seats or gaining seats over the Republican Party, because what is happening is the Republican Party is getting more favoritism from conservative judges and, of course, the U.S. Supreme Court themselves. And I'll be getting into that in just a minute. But so gerrymandering is perfectly legal. I personally think they should outlaw it. But, this happens in every election cycle, and it gets ugly. I mean, frickin' ugly. And it is legal. So to give you a little bit of history, because the United States Supreme Court ruled in Richo versus Common Cause in 2019 that federal courts cannot review allegations of partisan gerrymandering, deeming them political questions outside their jurisdiction. While racial gerrymandering is prohibited by the Voting Rights Acts of 1965, drawing district lines to benefit a political party remains lawful. Now, key reasons gerrymandering remains legal and non-judicial political question is, in fact, that Richo versus Common Cause, the court held that federal courts cannot decide when a partisan gerrymandering goes too far, as there's no clear, manageable standards for fairness and state authority. The Constitution largely leaves the power to draw districts in the hands of state legislatures, allowing the party in power to control the map-making process. But protected racial versus unprotected partisan intent while drawing districts based on race is illegal. Drawing them for partisan advantage, even in disproportionately affects certain demographics, is not prohibited, making it very difficult to challenge. And there has been no federal ban on this. Despite critics arguing it violates the First Amendment and principles of fair representation, no federal law currently prohibits partisan gerrymandering. So where does that take us from here? Well, it takes us to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, as you're well aware of, last week, the Supreme Court's supermajority of 6 highly conservative justices issued a ruling weakening voting right laws in Alexander versus South Carolina NAACP, considering it is opening bulge blast on what could be a dismal season of rulings from the High Court. The case is dense with details and doctrine. But here's what it is in a nutshell. South Carolina's Republican legislatures drew congressional district maps in a way that diminished the influence of black voters in choosing a representative. The state denied accusation of racial gerrymandering, which is still theoretically is legal. I apologize. And no South Carolina, they said this was a good old-fashioned partisan gerrymandering, a quaint and cherished part of our political system. It's the American way. The Founding Fathers did it, and this is an impossible argument. The Supreme Court assented. And it also happened, as you're well aware of, in Louisiana. Again, so the Democrats and what they've got left, they're trying to stay in some of these areas, and it's now happened just as recently in Tennessee. Tennessee gerrymandered the south of Tennessee in the Memphis area, eliminating the lone Democratic representative from that area. They've eliminated because they now made that a Republican stronghold. And so even in the state of Tennessee now, they got this all conservative Republican Party. It is a big news this week because this week because of the fact of the matter is the Republican Party is in trouble because of the really low approval ratings of Donald Trump and with the Iranian war. So a lot of voters are going to go out there and during the midterms, especially the independents, and they may be voting out some of their Republican current representatives. So let's talk about this just a little bit because I did some research. Is the Democratic Party in trouble because of this gerrymandering? Yes, to some extent. Can the Democrats still take back the House? Yes, to a certain extent they can. Can they take back the Senate? Probably not. Not now. their only shot is going to be the House of Representatives. And even with all the gerrymandering by the Republicans, they still can maybe get a razor-thin majority and take this back. And, of course, Hakeem Jeffries, who is the minority House leader, he's been very vocal about all this stuff. And, of course, Donald Trump's calling him a traitor, and he needs to be, arrested and all this. This is the same guy that said we need to stop the rhetoric and stop the name calling and, all the stuff after his assassination attempt at the, the press corps dinner. And even the Republicans are crying out, we need to have unity. It's okay to talk and have dissent, but let's do it in a civil matter. You can agree to disagree, and then all of a sudden, the president goes right back to name calling, calling Jaheim. This guy talks out of both side of his ears. I'll be nice here. And he stays up at 2:00 in the morning because he can't sleep and gets on Truth Social and starts name calling everybody else. So to get back to the story here, though, with gerrymandering, the Democrats still have a very strong possibility of taking back the House, but you can gerrymander everything to death. You still can vote for the person of your choice, and so the Democrats are just going to have to do their homework. They're going to have to just try to get it over the hump on this, and you, the voters, still have the right to vote for whomever you want to, even though you may be more in a stronghold Republican district. You can still vote with your conscience and your heart. Gerrymandering is, unless there's something drastic that's going to happen, is just going to go on forever and ever. And it happens every election cycle. I hate it. It stinks. They did it here in Florida, trying to take back, areas in Orange County and South Miami to make it more favorable to Republicans. To me, it's petty. It's childish. It's like those with the most toys wins. It's like playing in a sandbox, shuffling things around with your little toys and stuff. It's god awful sickening, and I don't like it. But it's unfortunately going to happen. And other news too here, we need to bring back Nicole Sefier. Now this lady who's in her early 40s, she got caught a little bit. Let's just put it that way. What happened with Dr. Nicole Sefier? She's the third person nominated to be Surgeon General by President Donald Trump, and another Fox News girl. Half his administration and his cabinet's made up from Fox News people. So she got caught with some. I shouldn't say tweets. It's on X and also on some other social media posts of some posts being very critical of Donald Trump and also being very critical of the CDC. And she deleted them. But, of course, as you know, with social media, things never get deleted. They're there in the cyberspace forever and ever. And so here's what happened. These posts, of course, were a little bit dated. All right, so got to give understanding here that even though she's been nominated, things that in the past she's been a little bit critical of Donald Trump and the CDC, and of course of Kennedy. So a little bit of background on her. She was a medical contributor to Fox News, and she's a working radiologist, and she's the author of books including Make America Healthy Again. And she was given a nod by Trump after the nominations of Dr. Jeanette Nesheiwat and Dr. Casey Means had to be withdrawn over lack of congressional support. And even though she does have her MAGA leanings, the doctor posted a number of messages, which you can see here, questioning the Trump administration's policies on issues like autism and vaccines in 2025. And earlier this year, the 44-year-old nominee also publicly questioned the president's reassurances regarding his own well-being and fitness. Yeah, even this person, as conservative as she is, understands that Donald Trump is starting to slip both mentally and physically. And I mean, you guys hitting 80 years old, and of course, he has more health problems than most people who've been in the presidency in the past. And even though she's the third choice, she had these little posts put up there. And so we're going to have to see what's going to happen to her because these posts will probably come back to bite her. Now, when she goes in before getting the approval, I'm sure those posts are going to come out, and especially the Democrats are going to get a hold of them, and they're going to question her, like, why did you post this stuff then? All right. Now, how those posts were survived, there is a company called Wayback Machine, and what they do with people who have high visibility or are popular, they when somebody puts up a tweet, they grab them and store them, and so they're always there for people to see, whether you like it or not. That's why you got to be careful what you post, because this company here will screenshot those things and grab them, and they'll come back to bite you in the butt sometimes, just like here. So, and of course, the media got a hold of it, and so it's always a cycle. Trump nominates somebody, and they become instantly loyal to him, and and then this stuff comes up. She goes, "Well, I was back then, and I've changed my mind and my policies since then. It's okay." But what's interesting here is even folks like her understand. Excuse me, get coffee here. That Trump's physical well-being and his mental fitness is starting to slip. Yeah, you know that, and I know that, even though you may not want to talk about it. But anyway, that's my podcast for this week on The Right Has Left. I hope you enjoyed it. I do look forward to your comments. And so until next time, you try to have a good week. You take care.